and welcome to another episode of Game School. My introduction to the PS3. I'd had the PlayStation 2 for quite a while. Enjoyed it, and really enjoyed it actually. And unlike all the other PlayStation versions prior to this one being launched, I didn't get the PS3 on launch day. I waited for quite a while before upgrading my PS2 to PS3, and the reason being, I think, is because, like I said before, I just really enjoyed the PS2, the games that were on it. All the new PlayStation games, or most of them, were on both platforms, or the ones that I was playing at the time. So I didn't really feel the need right then. I wasn't fully sort of sold on the PlayStation 3 at the time. So eventually, I got round to starting to buy Blu-ray discs. So that's what hooked me at the time, is that the Blu-rays were coming out. They were higher definition than normal DVDs. I love watching films, I love watching movies, and if I could get that movie experience in my own home, i.e. the quality, that would be great. And that's really, I think, the hook in for me on the PlayStation 3, because it was the first player that started playing these Blu-rays. Now, the other thing as well, I had a projector at the time, which I still have today, that I play my games and watch movies on a big screen. Like I say, you have this sort of like almost cinematic or cinema sort of feel about watching movies, which is really very cool at home. Got the a few really good games that that I'd seen but weren't available on the PlayStation, or the versions on the PlayStation 2 weren't really up to the same sort of spec or same sort of quality. So a few of these things for me did sort of make a little bit of a difference later on. I quite like the new controller, the 6-axis controller as well. So the PlayStation 3 was the first one of the PlayStations to do that, which was pretty good. I really enjoyed that. Other things that made the PlayStation 3 unique as well. Again, it was the first time you didn't need these memory cards. Actually came with a hard drive. So the one I bought on launch day, the one I eventually got hold of was it was an 80 gig hard drive in it, which was pretty good. So you could store loads and loads of games, and saving all of your game's data and other information, which again was really good. Actually, again, it was more, PlayStation again had upped the ante on the adult sort of market. I think the PlayStation 3 was definitely a nice looking machine. If I remember rightly, it was probably one of the most expensive machines as well. So they were charging, I think it's double what you would normally pay for these consoles when they come out, and that might have been a bit of a deterrent for me at the time as well, to be honest with you. Trying to justify the amount of money on a new game console. Maybe I couldn't do it. I can't really remember that far back. Things start getting a bit blurry now between the PlayStation 3 and 4, games wise, but also what tech came with it and these things. So anyway, the PlayStation 3 got hold of it. The PS Network was starting to really take hold then, but the machine itself had this glossy sort of look about it. You could have it just taken down as I did, or you could flip it on its side without a stand. but yeah, everything's hitting as well. They started introducing touch sensitive buttons, things like this, which was again pretty good. And HDMI came in. I had an optical, digital optical audio as well going into my system that I was using to sort of, to get the sound. So Dolby sound. So everything was an upgrade again. And some of the games that I was particularly interested in were things like Resistance and that. So these were very cinematic, very cool games. Again, my gaming took a bit of a different sort of turn. I was definitely playing more single player, strategic type of games. I've never really been one for the things like the Grand Theft Auto. I think I've enjoyed them, just as a bit of a blast and drive around in cars and maybe do a few missions. But ultimately, I do find them, apart from the graphics being, the graphics and everything else being a huge improvement on each game. Again, not something that really grabbed me. So some of the games that I started playing then were, epic games. So like say God of War, these types of games, Uncharted as well. Drake's this character Drake, which I actually really like. These were almost mini films starting to come through. Again, like I say, nowadays most games that are produced, huge budgets, almost film-like budgets, if not more, and they do feel like mini movies. The Metal Gear Solid games, they're crazy. They've got their cinematics that last half an hour, 40 minutes, even longer, which again is like watching a mini movie. Incredible. The amount of time you could probably just spend just watching the cinematics in between gameplay. Famously, that's what these particular games are all about. But again, I love the open world. I started really loving the open world sort of plays, and the Assassin's Creed series really, just hit the right tone with me. Right, I was interested in all the history, and ironically, a lot of the cities that Assassin's Creed were sort of involved in, like Rome, and in the early sort of days, or later, I should say, later days. There's one part I remember going around Florence in Assassin's Creed, and they're really good. And about a year later, or maybe a couple of years later, I'd actually gone to Florence with my partner, and it was pretty amazing that I knew some of the buildings through playing Assassin's Creed rather than actually physically being there myself. So this is the detail that these games were sort of bringing into your home, or the gameplay that was happening on these games. Absolutely phenomenal. So again, like I say, the PlayStation 3 really took me probably, it could have even been a year, maybe not quite, but around that sort of time, maybe 8 months to a year, when I decided, I'm going to upgrade and get the PlayStation 3. And like I said, because of the Blu-rays, that was the hook in for me originally, but afterwards, after I started playing the games, it really was that Sony have done it again. I enjoyed the new controller, that's for sure. The 6-axis sort of controller, where you move the controller around, and your character, you know, whatever they was holding, or your character could move in just the movement of the controller, which again was pretty amazing for me to be, for these sorts of things, thinking, oh, this is now moving into another dimension or another direction, with the sort of games that, you know, were going to come out or be developed through this new system. The PlayStation 3 was probably, I don't know if Sony would look back on it as a failure, but it was definitely not as successful as even the PlayStation 4 probably, or the PlayStation 2 at the time, in terms of innovative progression, or, you know, sort of moving the games or moving the consoles on, you know, forward. Now, I loved a lot of the games. So the things like, you know, The Last of Us is a game that I played, and like I said, some of these games are becoming, you know, had become as good as watching a movie almost, and, you know, the network, the sort of playing online, you know, again, had stepped up massively. You know, you really could take things to another level. There was a game that came out that shocked me, thinking how much I enjoyed it, because, you know, it really, I thought it was aimed at kids, you know, and this is Little Big Planet. Now, it's not the sort of game I would normally play, and Little Big Planet is just more like a platform, a 3D sort of platform type of game that you can build your environment. You can, you know, share that environment as well once you've built it, yeah, it was just such a lot of fun. It was very different. I absolutely enjoyed, you know, creating different environments for me to sort of, you know, again, to sort of play. And you had this little character, Sackboy, which, you know, was just made out of some missing sack type of thing. Again, blank canvas almost. And they were very clever. They got Stephen Fry to do the voiceover for the narration of it, and also some other parts of it. So it was a very well polished, very good game. And anyone who's played it, you know, sort of, I'm sure they'll agree with me. It's really creative. I think that was the key. That type of game had not really inspired me before, or I thought maybe it was too kiddie-like. Yeah, so Little Big Planet, again, with a completely different direction in terms of the style of game that I was playing, you know, at this point. So what I'm going to do, again, I'm going to sort of leave it there at this point, and so maybe talk about some of the other games and the things like this, you know, on the next episode, because I think for me, PlayStation 3, I like the idea of what it was doing, but it did feel like it was a pause, or not a pause, but a sort of just a stopgap. I didn't have it for as long as I'd had the PlayStation, or maybe I did. I can't remember. But anyway, so what I'll do, we'll stop at this point, and we'll talk about some more games on the PlayStation 3 in the next episode, and then, you know, I think you're going to be brought up to speed possibly with where I am on the PlayStation 4. So, you know, have a good day, whatever you need, whatever you're doing, and remember, there's no school like the old school, and I'm the headmaster.